How does a person answer why something happens?
When you look at the findings in different fields,
Scant is the part of life in which we live.
To attain the highest values.
Okay, so you've written really well on your blog the story of this, which we've touched on how you quit your job, you took that year off, and then I want to zoom forward to the point where you said you told a few friends that you're going to be doing this coaching thing, and they all thought you were a little crazy, and then you told a few more people, and you were surprised that a lot of people were like, oh, that's great. I'll be your guinea pig. And so you started testing the waters, and you were probably coaching a few people at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And then you made a decision to get accreditation with the ICF.
Yes.
What made you do that? Why did you think formal training was something that you had to add to your arsenal?
Well, here's the thing. So part of me being a coach was going back to zero. Beginner's mind is a Eastern concept, but the idea of I was coming out of a field where, especially in my second to last job, I was one of the experts in the company, specifically at what I did. So people used to come from other teams and say, how did you guys do that planning process? Or how did you guys go figure out the customer needs? Or how did you? So I had this kind of answer for everything, like this kind of expertise. And I knew the fundamental of coaching. If I wanted to learn, I gotta wipe all that clean. And one of the biggest challenges for me was starting from ground zero. Coaches, I did a coaching training where there were some 22-year-olds who were fresh out of college. There were people who had there was someone who ran a coffee shop. There were a couple like mid-level managers. There was me. And I was looking around and my ego was in full blast. Like, oh, I don't need to do this. I know better. And I just knew where I was coming from. And so I wanted to learn. And I also believe that for any innovation, so I'm going to talk out of two sides of my mouth here. One is, I knew I had a different way I wanted to point people in my coaching. And I knew from my experience and my own having worked with coaches, I could sort of do it. But I also knew that the best innovations tended to come not from people who just had no clue of anything, but they had actually, they sort of understood the core principles. They understood the core principles. They did learn something, and then they innovated. Then they disrupted the system. I don't know what Elon Musk did around cars.
Yeah.
I would imagine he talked to a whole bunch of people who knew cars and just geeked out and learning and talked to people.
Yeah.
But he didn't spend decades in the car industry, but he did learn the principles. Definitely with SpaceX, otherwise these rockets would have exploded. So for me, I knew I had to learn some of the core fundamental principles. And then if I choose to dislodge them, which I did actually, if I choose to dislodge them or go in a different direction, I have a map of the territory.
Yeah.
So, there were different ways, lucky for coaching, and I'm still working, I'm continuing. I'll continue to get the last accreditation, which I've sort of qualified for. I have some loose ends and an application to submit, is like a master level coach, whatever that means. So part of me just rebelled authority. This is an organization that decided they're going to create these things.
Right.
Why should I play this game?
Right.
But then I just realized the journey of me doing this, I've learned a ton.
Yeah.
I've learned a ton. And it saved me a lot of time from having to figure it out myself.
Yeah.
And it's also given me an inner knowing of where I am moving away from where some of the core concepts of what ICF coaching is, in some regard, that it's given me an understanding of even what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And that I am moving away. So I'm not one to say, and I've had many people ask me, how do I become a coach? And my default answer is trust your instinct, but here's what I've done. And I highly valued my certification, and I'm continuing to do training.
Yeah.
For example, I'm doing performative speaking, Robbie Crabtree. I've taken speaking stuff as a leader. I've given talks, but I want to know what I don't know and have fun with people too.
Yeah.
So,
Lifelong learning, right? Yeah, and it sounds like so it was less about the accreditation itself than more the map, the framework that you could learn. So Paul Leckrone and I talked about this on the very first episode of the show, we were talking about competitive gaming, and he was saying how you have to learn the rules first before you can understand how to break them.
Yeah.
And it's that same sort of concept, right? So you needed that framework, that mental model of what a coaching program would look like so that you could then innovate.
Yeah. And guess what? Super practical.
Yeah.
Because I'm talking to coaches. Coaches ask what my method. Coaches, I've worked with some companies who have asked for credentials, by the way. Very few of my clients care. In fact, none of my clients care, but companies can care.
Yeah.
And other coaches, it's a way of relating. So for me, it was a relay of just understanding the territory so that I can navigate. It's giving me language too.
Yeah.
And by the way, I've also made amazing friends. And there is a lot of really good thinking that's happening through the credentialing process, evolution in the coaching field. And so I feel like I have my pulse on it. Again, the fundamental driver here wasn't, I'm going to become a ACC, PCC, MCC coach so that I can achieve something.
Right.
It was, if this is going to be what I do for this phase of my life, or perhaps rest of my life, who knows, then let me just dive in and swim around and explore and get a feel for the water, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then I can decide where I want to go.
Yeah. And so you talk a lot in that blog post as well about how you reverse the ready, set, go. It's go, set, ready, right? And you talk about how doing coaching, actually, while you were learning about coaching, helped inform a lot of that, of your knowledge building. Can you talk more about you've some of the key elements of building knowledge: practice, reflection, feedback, and getting out of your comfort zone. And I think you've talked a lot earlier about reflection, and that's clearly been a big part of your life as you've progressed. Can you talk a little bit about the role, specifically in this, you were coaching while you were learning coaching, the role of practice, the role of feedback, and the role of kind of getting out of your comfort zone?
I showed up to my first class, a coaching training. I was socked in the dead of winter, living in a 200 square foot tiny house on a horse rescue sanctuary, heavy snow outside, freezing cold. And I decided I was going to be a coach. And so my intellect said, well, get a map of the territory, learn. And so I signed up for a course, one of the few at the time that would do it virtually, but it was a live course done virtually. In my first class, the teacher just said something. She said, you know what? For most of you, you're just ready now. But let's dive in. And I'll tell you, that hit me. Like, sometimes these words just hit you. And that hit me. I'm like, wait a second. Sure, why not? And that night, I just posted a post on Facebook saying, hey, I'm diving into coaching. And that led to my first 3 clients.
Yeah.
And now the art of coaching is to be in a conversation with a human. And so the good programs also have lots of practice. The problem is, if I'm a coach and I'm learning coaching, and part of the deal is, Andrew, I'm coaching you, and so come to me with a real problem, so it's real coaching, and I have a real problem, so it's real coaching, or a real opportunity to explore. After a while, it gets contrived.
Yeah.
And a half-hour practice coaching session isn't the same as having an exploration that can last months.
Yeah.
And so for me, I just knew it would be like learning art from a book. I needed to get some paint and start painting.
Right.
And so I just started painting. And what it did was accelerate the learning. Very practically, my questions got way better. And I probably annoyed some of the instructors because I had all kinds of questions. In fact, it led me to different coaching styles, approaches, and mentors very quickly. Because not everyone was doing this. And so I had some real clients with real business issues that I was trying to support, and I was running into problems. And so I'd be in a group of coaches or coaches in training, and I'd have questions, and or I'd listen to other people's questions, and they seemed to be grounded based on their thinking, not what was actually going on. And often I would just come with just really gnarly problems, like stories from the trenches, like stuff I just couldn't figure out.
Specific in real world.
Specific.
Yeah.
Specific. Like I've got a leader and one of his team members has turned on him and is manipulating the team. Like, what do I do for him and the team? Like what? And so, you know, there could be the stock answer of, well, just invite your client into a coaching session to explore. And, you know, there's this stuff, which in theory, this is all true, but I've got a client freaking out. I've got a team member who's seemingly flipped. What do I do? Like, what do I do? So some of it was my own insecurity, but there's a level of specificity to the questions and what I listened for. It accelerated my learning, and it actually led me to start shifting how I coached and where I sought training as a coach and mentorship. That would have been a lot slower had I not started coaching right off the bat. And by the way, I wanted to earn an income and I had some practical matters to take care of.
Yeah, that helps as well.
Yeah.
How did you measure your improvements as a coach?
I'll speak to what I do now. Before I was still what I would call an outside-in based coach. I'd very much look at outcomes, client generated outcomes. I want to get a promotion. I want to make whatever partner or director or whatever, or I want to ace my next review or whatever it is, or I want to grow my business by so much or whatever it is. So there are outcomes. Outcomes matter. If people don't get outcomes, my business will go away. Some people may just want to talk to me because they feel good, but that won't last. I mean, and I don't want to just be in a feel-good conversation. I want some impact.
Yeah.
So at first it was outcomes. So we explore outcomes, and I still do. What are the desires and deep-rooted cares and outcomes for people? So I used to very much look at that and do some subjective rating scales. Okay, like what are the aspects of your work and life that matter to you? How satisfied are you? And do checkpoints along the way. So I do that. I still do to some degree with clients. But I realized very quickly that what people would say they want at the start often is not what they really need and not what they value the most. And so, in some cases, not where the progress happens. And so I looked to myself at what I thought I wanted at the beginning of my sabbatical and what I got. I would have called it failure. Yeah. But it was exactly, I mean, looking back, I'm like, do not change one thing. Yeah. And I wrote that in the blog post you're referencing. I said, TLDR, I would not change a thing, because you can read that and say, oh, Ravi wasted several years. Yeah. I would not change a thing. Yeah. So that fundamentally is, I suppose a key insight for me.
And that seems like quite a challenge, actually, because when you go on these coaching journeys with your clients, you don't know where that's going to go and where you're actually going to be able to make an impact for them. Right. So it becomes like something that it's almost a discovery that you're both going through.
Yeah. So exactly. So the question is that a journey they want to be on? Yeah. So, and this is something I'm still trying to figure out. I think in the coaching world, there are a few of us that coach in the way I coach. It can be a bit more tricky. Some of the filtering up front, there are some clients who are not right for me. They want an accountability coach to help them, create breakthrough results in something, and to muster courage and effort. And they're looking outside for all the solutions. And, even for those people, though, in their heart of hearts, if they are sincere about wanting to explore how they can make more impact from a different place where they're expending half the effort, way less stress, and getting somewhere. And if there's a level of openness to that. Now, what I am confident in is, especially in the domain of work, that when people start looking in that direction, they get results. The results come. There just needs to be an openness around what it is. Yeah. I recently worked with a lead product manager at Facebook. Now, when I coached him, he was in a very different situation. The customer stories on my website on the results tab you can look at. and he was public, so he gave me his testimonial story. I coached him in the middle of a pandemic after closing his startup, trying to figure out what's next through a process of discovery, identification, landing a job, moving his family, and ramping up and delivering a product in 7 weeks in his new job. I mean, that whole process. And it all came from him. Him learning where his own leverage points were and learning to trust and navigate. And it was not, to say it was uncomfortable isn't the thing. I mean, yes, there were tons of challenges. I mean, the whole pandemic came out of nowhere. I mean, the whole journey was like a wild ride, but there was a level he was coming from and trust. And in the end, what he said was, I came to Ravi looking for tactics and strategies to become a better product manager and leader in tech. What I got was a lesson in how to be human.
Yeah.
And I couldn't have made that up. In fact, he said that. It's on my website, his words.
Yeah. That's giving me chills.
That wasn't even my language, but it spoke to something deep. But that fundamentally is the shift. If we can be more human, and if we can start understanding the kind of hidden power, I call it just invisible powers that we have, our capacities, with a place of less pressure, more of that comes out, and the impact is inevitable. What it is can be variable.
Yeah.
But the key thing is, if someone's on that journey of learning to understand how they can make impact from a different place and are willing to go there, then the journey is going to be more fun and more transformational long term. And then we look back and reflect on, my number one question at the end of I coach people for 6+ months at a stretch, is what have you learned about yourself? What have you learned about life? What have you learned that shifts what you do? And then lastly, what results have you experienced?
It's the last thing.
Yeah. So
that's amazing. What kind I read that testimonial, but hearing it from you as well, that just felt so real. That was amazing. What challenges do you have, I'd say, sort of selling this to people as an idea, when some people just want the results straight away, right? Like, that's a big leap for a lot of people to go to say, oh yeah, this is worth it to get me where I want to be.
Framing is important. I'm still trying to discover. The ancients have spent thousands of years trying to discover this, right? Whether you're into Stoicism, Taoism, Hinduism, Advaita Vedanta, which is my tradition that I've been raised in, the ancients have. This is not new, and my take is quite simple. Okay, we're in a culture and world that's looking for external solutions to fundamentally internal problems. But every leader or professional, even if you're not running a team, who aspires to be better, if you showed them a way, let me give a very practical example that a coach once told me that I think will make this very clear.
Cool.
Andrew, if your commute to work every day was 30 minutes, and you've been doing that commute for 2 years, and I come along and show you, hey, you take that route, you'll get there in 15 minutes, and it's way more scenic. Right? I mean, how long would it take? I mean, you're just on it.
Yeah.
Now, okay, we're talking about outcome, but if the outcome is unleashing more of your natural capacity to be more effective, if it is elevating your effectiveness at work as a leader, as a creator, as an engineer, and I can say, you'll get there in half the time. It only takes one trip for you to change everything. The dominoes fall. You're on the 15-minute journey. It's more fun, more enjoyable, etc. And so for me, the challenge is communicating that. Now, what I understand is I can only speak by what I know. So I've experienced this in my life, in my career, in the corporate world, and also as a coach, and in working with clients. So what I do is explore where human potential comes from, leadership, progress, insight, decisions, whatever people are stuck on, management of people, like where does that come from? And right now I primarily do that through, I have lots of conversations. Lots of them are good chats. Some lead to clients. Some lead to clients in years into the future. I don't know. But for me, if I can be in that conversation around where our potential comes from, how it works from a first principles perspective, then if someone can observe it and get it and see, wait a second, that's a more enjoyable path. Let me try. Then we go there. Now, I don't claim to be in control of any of this. I mean, some people aren't seeing it. Some think it's just snake oil. People think what they think. But for me, there's enough of a need. There are great people with big hearts who are suffering in the world of business. And if we can have people find a way to be more awesome, as a mentor, Michael Neal once told me, if we can find a way to help people be more awesome, it's good for them, their families, their teams. And business is a huge leverage point for society to be better. And so for me, I want to help transform this world of business to be more effective and impactful from a different place. And for me, it starts with not just CEOs. I mean, it starts with, engineers coming out and trying to build their careers, because in 5-10 years, they will be the next generation of leaders. And I actually find, me personally, I love working with people at all levels. I love people who are in that growth phase of their career. They're in those first, years 3, 5, 7, 10. They're ambitious, but they also realize that there needs to be a different way and intellect and effort to get there.